Okay, so we are back to this business of having done the course already with the first edition, and then the second edition just came out. So I decided to take whatever I found to be new enough and important enough and add it to the course that was already recorded. So we had 20 podcasts in this section on capacity development and some additions I'm making here. So the last podcast is on conclusions, and just before the last podcast I'm adding a few points that are new in the second edition. So let's look at principles of capacity development. To further grasp what capacity development is, it's helpful to consider the main principles of for how it should be done. There are again several ways to present such content, but I find that the following 8 principles capture the essence of it very well. So in the first version we had done it as major ships or central ships, where we looked at partnership, friendship, relationship, stewardship, grantsmanship, penmanship, and so on and so forth. It's slightly rearranged here with ownership, partnership, contextualization, flexibility, learning, accountability, and long-term, as well as sustainability itself. So everything we recorded so far on all the central ships is not really a waste. They are useful. So let's just read these separate ways of the way it is presented in the second edition. So ownership we already discussed. The first of the cornerstones of capacity development is local ownership, and we made many points about it. Means that internal partners are always primarily responsible for their capacity development, while external partners have supporting roles. In short, since ownership is about the formation and possession of ideas, strategies, development processes, resources, and results, local ownership is about internal partners driving their own capacity development. So here is a prop for that. Vulnerability and capacity assessment, VCA, is an influential tool to facilitate local ownership. So this is from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, who are always there for assisting countries in disaster management, but also for bringing these kind of vulnerability and capacity assessment. We have discussed vulnerability elsewhere. Risk as considered these days from, let's say, IPCC reports is a multiplication of hazard, vulnerability, exposure, and now response is also added. So vulnerability depends on your socioeconomic class, age, gender, and various other factors. So the capacity and vulnerability then need to be assessed in that context. Contextualization in here for principles of capacity development. Capacity development must not only be driven by internal partners, but integrated into and tailored for each particular local context. So like adaptation, it's always location specific, and local context is very critical. There is nothing like global adaptation. Similarly, no global sustainability. All local sustainabilities in the local context have to add up to global sustainability. This requisite contextualization of capacity development encompasses a comprehensive understanding of the community, organization, society, or whatever human environment system, including the context it is embedded in and its current capacity to perform the functions the partnership aspires to develop further. In short, any capacity development initiative must be based on a systematic understanding of the problem it intends to address and how the human environment system works in general. Okay, so here are the different props used for context. So here you have context of an Asian city with religious or cultural place in the middle. There is a city with all kinds of mixed neighborhoods here, and this is a different context in terms of location as well as the land use and landscape in general. Each of them will come with different climate parameters, different climate hazards, different socioeconomic standards, per capita income, etc., and they will come with different vulnerabilities and existing capacities on which you are going to build capacity, additional capacity, right? Flexibility is also here. So next one is flexibility. Flexibility is also a central principle of capacity building, since the only permanent feature of our world is its impermanence. In other words, capacity development must not only be tailored to its particular context at its outset, but continuously adjusted as the context changes, and rest assured the context is always changing. In adaptation, we talked about planning, designing and implementing flexible adaptation plans, and there I kept mentioning how not everything can be flexible, and the example always is of course building a seawall against sea level rise. Unless it's a floating seawall, you don't necessarily have flexibility of redoing it. So communities, organizations, societies and all other kinds of human environment systems are never static, nor do they exist in static surroundings. Although planned activities to develop capacity may remain relevant and feasible despite specific changes, other changes or particular combinations or aggregations of such changes may require more or less substantial revision of the plan for any capacity to be developed. These changes can stem from the results of implemented activities within the capacity development initiative, arise out of activities implemented as part of other purposeful projects or programs, or emerge in the co-evolution of the human environment system and its surroundings in general. Next up is learning. So capacity development is largely about learning. It is about acquiring knowledge and understanding, competence and skills, attitudes and preferences, and values and behaviors. It's not only about learning to do things, but also if we are doing the right things and how we decide what is right. We talked about the value and who decides what the value is, and how different communities may have different things they consider valuable, but here we are trying to decide what is right and how to decide what is right. These distinct yet interconnected aspects of learning can be conceived as three reflexive loops that we are looking at here, and engaging in only the first can be referred to as single loop learning in the first, and the second as double loop learning, and in all three as triple loop learning, although triple loop learning is not explicitly labeled as such. It's not only about developing capacities to address some identified problems, but also about learning how to develop capacities better to develop those capacities. Better capacity to develop capacity, which I will come back to shortly. This link to learning is the first approach to resilience presented in this book in chapter 7 and 8 that you can go back and look. So here we have context. So this is the triple loop learning. So we know assumptions. We have to analyze assumptions as we talked about before. So how do we decide what is right? So this loop is required to make sure the context and assumptions match, and then you need to build actions where we have to decide if we are doing the right things and how we decide what is right. And of course you want outcomes or results, and again you have to see, are we doing the things right? Are we doing the right things, and are we doing the things right? Are we doing the right things right? So it's kind of a intuitive thing, yet it needs to be contextualized as required in each human environment system that you are dealing with, which is location specific. Long term, of course, is a very good requirement for adaptation as well as sustainability. Capacity development is a long-term process. Sustainable change takes time, as we'll see, and there is no way to rush it. This is just a prop here of a hourglass, so change takes time and there is no way to rush it. Capacity development involves investing in people and resources, facilitating for them to organize, designing and implementing policies and procedures, and changing behaviors, norms, attitudes and preferences. When you say changing behaviors, that's very difficult. Changing norms may happen based on experiences, but typically those are cultural attributes that have evolved over a long time, so that's not so easy either. Attitudes and preferences may change based on how the society is evolving, how economic growth is happening, and so on. Not always good, because consumption may keep growing as economy grows. So it's a gradual and iterative process that requires long-term engagement and patience to achieve meaningful results, although some quick and visible results can be important to bolster political support, and mainstreaming and finding funding as well, resources and so on, are critical, and also these can promote further investment and facilitate willingness to change. So if people see a benefit in changing, then in the long term they can keep feeling more willing to change, so to continue to enjoy the benefits that come from these. So we'll come back and look at performing principles in the next podcast. And remember again that these are additions to the first version of the book, the first edition of the book. So this is some further ideas on capacity building from the second edition. So no continuity is lost, and only additions are being made, so not to worry, and we'll come back and do the conclusions and everything will make sense. Okay, so see you in the next podcast.